A once healthy and energetic mother of 3 was left bedbound for a year after the symptoms of long COVID left her with extreme pain daily. Kirsty Huckster, who had 3 doses of the COVID vaccine months before she caught the virus in December 2022, suffered so badly she was scared to move in case she had a heart attack. The 46-year-old from Essex, like millions of people, first had mild symptoms, primarily a headache and tiredness, but a nightmare ensued over the following 12 months. She went from being a budding writer who volunteered at her local church to barely being able to move without going into tremors. The only time she got out of bed was to go to the toilet. There were barely any symptoms. It was only because my husband, David, had a headache that I took a test, she said. Otherwise, I would have just thought I was a bit tired. 4 days after testing positive, Mrs. Huckster, who is mom to Rachel, 20, Leah, 17, and Elijah, 14, returned to her job as the manager of the youth charity since she felt fine. But when the aspiring writer started to walk to work, she began to get out of breath. I was also getting tired by late afternoon, so I just tried to rest more, she said. Although many people note tiredness as a side effect of COVID, Mrs. Huckster sensed something wasn't right when she didn't recover after a few weeks and her fatigue got worse. I started to do click and collect instead of going to the supermarket because I didn't think I could walk around for 45 minutes, and I worked from home a few days a week. At this point, I was getting tired but otherwise felt fine, she said. But a month later in February 2023, she started to feel really bad and needed to stay in bed more frequently. That was my first indicator that this would not just disappear, she said. I continued for a few months pacing myself, barely leaving the house, just working from home, but still doing housework. I noticed that after putting the bins out one night, I felt absolutely exhausted. My muscles were burning. Around 2 million people in the UK are reported to live with long COVID, including 112,000 children, while U.S. officials suggest 1 in 10 people who catch the virus will develop the condition. Extreme tiredness, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, dizziness, brain fog, joint pain, and muscle aches are all telltale signs of the condition. Ms. Huckster recalls finally feeling good after a few days of resting. 5 months after testing positive, she was able to get out the house more. But one night, her debilitating symptoms came back. I couldn't stand up for very long. I felt like I was being pushed down to the ground, she recalled. In June last year, Mrs. Huckster woke up at 4 a.m. alone at home with a racing heart, which didn't subside. She called an ambulance when she was scared to move in case she had a heart attack. But despite her ordeal, she was discharged from hospital and told she was young and healthy. But 2 months later, in August 2023, she was bedbound and only able to stand to get to the toilet. I ate all my meals in bed. My sleep was unrefreshing and I would often be awake for hours during the night, she said. She confessed she even struggled to read books because they gave her a headache as the words went fuzzy on the page. Mrs. Huckster said I could also only watch TV for about 30 minutes at a time as it exhausted me. It can't have been easy for my kids to watch their previously healthy mom become so radically different. I'd rely on them to help with basic tasks like bringing me food and water. My role as manager of the youth charity had to go as I'm not capable of doing that. It was in these frightening and confusing times that Mrs. Huckster found herself thinking a lot about death. She said I didn't think about my life or what I used to be able to do or what I couldn't do because that felt overwhelming. It was frightening and confusing. I thought a lot about death. Was this the end? Should I start writing letters for my children in case this was it? Last September, she found herself struggling to breathe again and called an ambulance. She was then referred to an NHS long COVID clinic. She recalls feel like she was being poisoned and losing a stone due to gut issues. When I told a paramedic this, she replied, "Well, at least you're slim." We even bought a cheap wheelchair online when I realized there was no way I could walk anywhere anymore, she said.